Welcome to our channel, everybody. I'm Randall and this is Farmington Famous. Today we're going to be diving into the world of tomatoes in the greenhouse. We're going to be talking about some of the growing characteristics, our setup, and ultimately we're going to do a side-by-side taste test between an heirloom grown tomato in the greenhouse and the new greenhouse varieties that are being sold out to the market. So stay tuned. To get started, let's talk about the basic structure that we have here. We have a 24 by 60 high tunnel kit. I've also added in a ventilation system and a heating system, and this is all on a thermostat, and it's climate controlled. I started my tomato plants back in December, back during whenever it was freezing temperatures, and I started the seeds in here, and I've grown them in here in the entire time. Back during the winter, we didn't have the shade cloth on. I actually just added this shade cloth just yesterday morning because now we're up into the 90-degree temperatures, and inside the greenhouse we're hitting up into the hundreds. So I needed to add the shade cloth, and I actually have to say that it has brought the temperatures down quite a bit in here. Very comfortable. I don't have the ventilation system pulling air through here while I'm making the video because I didn't want to drown out the audio. But as soon as this video is over, I'll turn the ventilation back on to keep circulating the air and keep things cool. But it's cool enough in here that I'm not breaking out in sweat while trying to make this video. All right, our system we have is on drip tape irrigation, and we have string trellis coming down from this truss right here. It's just a nylon line come down, and I use tomato clips, and I train the tomato plants to a central leader. So that's how we have the basic system set up. Now on the first part of the planting here, this row, this is where all of my heirlooms are at. So let's go down the row and let's just give a little quick overview of everything that we're growing. Right here on this very first one is my Jarson 20 heirloom. I grew this variety last year in a grow off with a tomato group on Facebook, and I liked it so much I decided to plant it again in this greenhouse. Makes a nice, big, juicy, perfect looking tomato. And just for reference, here's a couple of them right here that are ready to be picked and eaten on a nice piece of bread with some mayonnaise, and make that delicious tomato sandwich with. Right next to it, I have what we call red snapper. You can get this variety from Hoss Tools, and it also makes a nice big tomato desirable. I don't think Hossinator classifies as an heirloom variety, but going a little further down, I got this Trip L crop tomato, and it's grown all the way up to about the 6-foot mark here, and it seems to be topping out. And I don't know if that's due to the heat that was building up in here since the greenhouse was getting so hot, but everything was beautiful and luscious back whenever it was in the 80s. And we didn't have these hot temperatures setting in. But now that the temperatures are ramping up, all of our tomatoes seem to be on the decline. That's okay. I've got other varieties started right here, and these are going to be carrying us through the summer. So moving on further down, we've got pink Berkeley tie-dye. We're looking at about a 4-foot mark here. This did okay. We've got a few tomatoes on it. It didn't actually load up as much as some of the other varieties we're going to talk about, but I've got 2 plants of that. I have Rebel Starfighter, and this is actually a very beautiful tomato. And the first couple of tomatoes, we've already had a picking through this greenhouse, 1 or 2 pickings, but how beautiful that tomato is. I'll be growing this one again. Had good flavor on that one. Right next to it, I've got Pink Wonderful. So there's some tomatoes there, nice little clusters. Drawbacks are that they stay a little green on the top. They're kind of meaty. They're okay. And as you see, as we go up the line right here, we're looking at over 6 foot, and they're still putting on, they're still bearing. Not an ideal tomato, but at least we're getting a good amount of fruit off of it. Now, here we go into our first series of greenhouse tomatoes. This is Granadero. This is a paste type variety. It has a nice little disease package with it. It's like a Roma, but more resistant to disease. And as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, everything's on the decline, so I'm starting to get, the leaves are starting to get on its way out. I need to trim these off. But the tomatoes are looking good. We've got some nice little clusters coming on here. But look at these vines right here. These go all the way up to the top. If I was to trellis that up there, you can see that reaches right almost just 6 inches away from the top. So that's right at 9 foot. And I've still got tomatoes and it's still blooming. This has been the star of the show right here in the greenhouse, is these Granadero Roma style tomatoes. And I'm getting lots of nice little clusters off of this. This makes me happy to see all of these. So this will definitely be a variety that I do in the that I grow in the greenhouse from here on out, just because of the sheer performance of it. Moving on down, we've got another greenhouse variety. Moving on down, we've got another variety here that's a high disease package. This is Lemon Boy Plus. Nice little yellow tomatoes coming on here. I actually need to trellis this one back over and tie it up. But I've got tomatoes all the way up that vine, and it's doing real good. So we'll come back and we'll tie that one up later. Again, Lemon Boy. Doing okay. Now, I'm really proud of how this one has turned out. This is called Hot Streak. This is documented as a greenhouse variety, but look at those stripings in that tomato. That's absolutely beautiful. They look great, and looks like this one hasn't topped out as much, but this one right here, this plant, a nice little cluster of tomatoes. And as I stand up, I'm still getting tomatoes towards the top. I'm over 6 foot here, 6.5 foot, and it's still flowering and setting fruit. So this is sure enough a good variety. Even though we've facing these hot temperatures, this one's doing really good. Now moving on down, I've got 3 plants. This is a determinate variety, BHN 589. And if you notice, it has flowered, it has set nice big fruit, and I've got clusters of it. But the vines, they didn't grow very tall. They've topped out here about 4 foot tall. And this one actually slipped down the trellis, and most of the plants laying on the ground. But look at all that fruit that's laying on the ground. I mentioned that this was a determinate variety, and determinate means it only gets a certain amount of height on it. It sets its fruit all at one time, and then the plant is done. This doesn't have such a high disease package as, say, Hot Streak or Granadero, but because it's determinate, it set all of its fruit. It doesn't need to withstand months-long disease endurance. Sets its fruit and it's done. Now, let's go ahead, let's grab some of these fruit, let's head on back inside, let's do a taste test and see how they stack up next to each other at the table. All right, here we are for the taste test portion of the video. We've come in the house, we've got some fruit laid out here. I've got, to my right here, your left, Lemon Boy Plus, Hot Streak, BHN 589, and then I have a Jarson 20 heirloom type tomato, and I'm just going to kind of gauge the taste of these high tunnel, high disease resistant varieties up against how an heirloom would taste. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got a bunch of granaderos here also. You can see these in the front ground. What I like really about the granadero is how they come off in batches of stems. That's nice. You could just kind of put those to the side in your kitchen and take them right off the stem as you need them. I like the way those store. Now, for greenhouse variety tomatoes, one of the things that commercial markets score on is how beautiful is that tomato. So a greenhouse variety of tomato is looking for a nice round tomato that looks something like this. It doesn't have a lot of greening on the shoulders, not a lot of imperfections. Say as if you look at this heirloom tomato, this is a nice looking heirloom tomato, but it has green shoulders, cat facing here, and then you get a little cat facing scar on the bottom also, if cat facing is not the proper term for that. You can let me know in the comments, but I think that's correct. So heirlooms are not prime for the commercial market, whereas some of these have been bred just to be sold. BHN 589, nice looking tomato. You can see how beautiful those tomatoes look. So let's go ahead and let's cut a few of these open and let's do a taste test up against our heirloom tomato and see how they taste. I've always liked the Lemon Boy because of the mild flavor that it has. It doesn't have a high high acid content. I know a lot of people like that, and I think the acid content is the one that really gives a tomato flavor. But every once in a while, you want something a little bit different. A yellow type tomato or a white tomato might be something to kind of mix up the game for you and give you a little bit different flavor. So I'm going to cut us a nice little slice right there. You can see what that on the inside, you don't have that core down through the middle like you would on an heirloom type tomato. So let's go ahead and let's just give this a nice little taste. Mild. It doesn't have that high acid flavor that a lot of tomato people look for. This would make a good tomato sandwich though. Great for just snacking in the yard. If you can get them smaller like this out in your garden, you just eat on one of these while you're touring around your garden checking out the fruit. If you're looking for a commercial aspect though, they have plenty of nice looking fruits. If you want to think about growing tomatoes commercial and you've not really checked out the Lemon Boy Plus. Now, Lemon Boy Plus is a disease improvement on Lemon Boy. Lemon Boy's been around for a number of years, even decades, but they needed to step up the disease resistance because they started developing and succumbing to a lot of diseases out there. And Lemon Boy is resistant to stem canker, fusarium, crown and root rot, wilt 1 through 3, gray leaf spot. It's even resistant to nematodes. People in Florida, they battle nematodes in that sandy soil that they have. And Lemon Boy is resistant to nematodes. And it's the only variety out of all these that I've got here that is documented to be nematode resistant. It's also resistant to the mosaic virus, verticillium wilt, and different other leaf molds. So it has a high disease resistant package. So we'll go ahead and put that down, set that to the side. Now let's move on to Hot Streak. I'm really excited about this one. Beautiful tomatoes. Look at all that gold streaking on the top of that red skin. For a greenhouse tomato, man, you couldn't ask for anything just more beautiful than that tomato right there. And it produces quite a bit. First fruits right off the vine. Look how nice and big that is. That's not something you want to put on a commercial market. But if you've got a farm stand just sitting beside the road and you have some nice tomatoes like that to show you some customers, that's pretty impressive. 1 or 2 slices make a good looking sandwich out of that. But I think these medium-sized tomatoes are the ideal tomato size for a burger or a tomato sandwich. You get a slice of that, 1.5 slices, you've got a nice little meal. So let me grab. Here's one that's got some scarring on it. I'm going to open this one up. Let's just take a look at this one. Cut that bottom off of that. Let's cut a nice thick chunk of that. Again, we don't have that core in the middle. Nice and meaty, not a lot of seeds, even in that little tomato. So let's give it a taste. A little bit more of the acidic taste, probably due to the redness of the tomato. Very impressive. That is a good tomato. Now, what I like about these improved varieties of greenhouse tomatoes, back in the day, they would breed these tomatoes for shipping and for looks, and they didn't care about the flavor of tomato. It wasn't relative. A lot of people got turned off to tomatoes because the typical store-bought tomato is the only thing they ever knew of a tomato. And so they're trying to breed flavor back into some of these tomatoes, and they've been successful with these varieties so far. These are some really good flavors. I'm excited that they're starting to breed flavor back into a tomato. You get a lot of people out there that they're opposed to having tomatoes on their burger at the store, and I don't blame them. I'm a bit of a tomato snob myself, and I don't want that tasteless, cardboard flavored tomato on my burger either. If I'm in a store, if I'm at a burger place and they ask me if they want tomato, I'm like, no, just leave the tomato off because I don't want to be disappointed. But you get a tomato like this, you put it on that burger, it complements it, and it complements it well. Move on to BHN 589. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different from some of the other greenhouse tomatoes I've talked about. Now, what makes this one different is this is a determinate tomato, which means it grows up to a certain height, it flowers, and it sets heavy fruit production all at one time. You can come in, you can do a big harvest, 1 or 2 harvests, and then the plant is done, you rip it up, you start over, and you move in with the next crop. That's the goal behind a determinate tomato. And living in the South, a determinate tomato is actually not a very bad idea. We have such a short window for growing tomatoes down here because of the late spring frost and then the early onset of high heat. Once you get into the 90s, tomatoes don't really want to set fruit. So if you're looking at a determinate variety and you can plant it within 75, 80 days, you can harvest all your fruit. You can do all your canning or your selling, and then you're done. This BHN 589 might be ideal for whatever you're looking at. But look at this. No greening on the shoulders, very little defects. Overall, man, that's a 10 out of a 10 of a looking of a tomato. And I've got one right here that's really good and ripe. Again, looks great. Let's cut it open, give it a taste. All these tomatoes you see me tasting today, I'm not finishing them. We're going to process these into canned tomatoes. These aren't going to go to waste. Never waste a good tomato, but look at that. Beefsteak style tomato. Very little seeds, a lot of meat. No green core down the middle again. Now, BHN 589 doesn't have the high disease resistance that the rest of these have. And it's not really that important. If you think about it, within 80 days, you're going to grow that plant up and you're going to harvest all the fruit at one time. It don't really have to withstand the late summer, all the disease resistance that your intermediate varieties have. And intermediates mean that as the plant grows up, it sets fruit, ripens fruit, set fruit, ripen fruit, and on and on and on. You can grow these for several months, 9, 10 months in a greenhouse, and get a gradual harvest all along. And you're not going to harvest like the BHN 589, which does it all at one time. So those are some pros and cons to think about. But let's give BHN 589 a little taste. Okay, so far, between the three, this one's got it in flavor. It's a really good flavor, nice acid balance. It's not an overwhelming acid flavor. It's not the mellow, low acid flavors that I get from these other two. I'm impressed with the flavor of this one. And if you were going to do a blind taste test of which one, I believe BH 589 would beat these out as far as quality of the flavor. I'm a little hungry. I've not had dinner yet. And I'm filming this about 10 minutes before time to eat.
It's time to eat.
It says time to eat. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up real soon. Let's grab a Granadero paste style tomato. What I do like about these, I mentioned how they come off in clusters, but it's an intermediate indeterminate variety, and it fruits all season long, so I can harvest those clusters of tomatoes for a nice long time.
There you go.
There he goes. I got a little bit of greening right down the middle of the stem there. Let's cut this thing long ways and let's take a look. Got a little bit of stem down the middle, but overall, it's a nice meaty tomato. Very low seed content, very little gelatin in there. Very little seed cavity. So that would make a very nice paste tomato. Very meaty. Doesn't have that high acid flavor that a beefsteak tomato has. But overall, these things are meant for cooking. They're not made for putting on sandwiches. Now, let's open up a Jarson 20 heirloom style tomato. And let's just take a real quick taste of this thing. I can't wait to open this up. I've been looking forward to this tomato. I got a little spot right there on the end, so we'll go ahead and cut that out. This tomato happened to be bred by a Polish breeder. And I was actually on the Jarson team last year, which means there's a Facebook group, Tomato Lovers Collective. And they did a grow out of all the Jarson varieties from that breeder. And so I was chosen to grow Jarson 20. Let's just look at Jarson 20 real quick. Look at all the different colors that you have in there. There's some greening around the outside. And it's the colors you see here is due to the breeding of the genetics that it's bred with. Let's just give it a quick taste. We got a nice balance between seed cavity and meat. There's that high acid. Okay, let's talk about something. Hands down, heirloom is probably the best flavor that you're ever going to find in a tomato. They don't come with high disease resistance. We really need the disease resistance in the south to get a nice tomato harvest. But you want to plant just a couple of these in order to get at least 1 or 2 fruit. You may have to baby it down here in this location. But in my opinion, a good heirloom tomato is worth it just for the eating experience. For putting up, for selling, They're really coming along on these greenhouse varieties. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this little tour of some greenhouse varieties of tomatoes, comparing them, pros and cons, between what they're delivering to us today in the commercial market, and then what we're used to and growing in your backyard and your little home garden. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and share it on social media. If you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button and follow us along, and we can bring more content to you like this. Remember, keep growing, keep building, and always keep adventuring. Together, we're Flemington Famous. We'll see you on the next update.